The Joe Rogan Experience.
Unlike China, the United States has, at least in perception, a clear differentiation between business and government.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the concerns that when I've talked to experts in China and their electronics and their technological innovation is that they're inexorably connected to their government in some way, shape, or form. And that it's one of the main reasons it makes it incredibly difficult to compete with them on a global marketplace.
Yeah.
When you see that our State Department has told people to stop using Huawei devices because Huawei, which is the #2 provider of cell phones in this world now, they're connected to the Chinese government. Like, how do you take that? What do you do about that situation and
that relationship between the private sector and government here?
In particular with the competition, when it comes to data, I mean, we're very concerned about people sharing data. We've done it ourselves. We've spied on it. We've proven through the Edward Snowden case. Our government's doing as well to us. We're worried the Chinese are doing it to us. So we're saying, don't buy Chinese stuff. They're going to steal your data and steal your information and steal your business secrets.
Yeah.
What can you do to stop that? What can you do to mitigate what's already happened?
Ultimately, you can't stop every single individual with what they're purchasing. I think that, you can regulate what is sold here in the United States. I think there's a role that government can play, especially as we're talking about artificial intelligence and that kind of technology. Again, first in understanding it and then being that responsible party to make sure that what is being developed is not something that's going to result in these unintended negative consequences. So obviously our government doesn't have ownership over private business in this country, but we still do have sensible regulations and a responsibility that government has to play in regulating what businesses can and can't do.
What's interesting to me is this competition aspect between dealing with essentially just the private sector here in America versus the private sector in China that's combined inexorably with the military and that they have much more influence over what gets done and how things get done. What did you pay attention at all to the State Department's call for a boycott of Huawei products?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about that?
Well, I understood it. I think there is a concern about that technology being used to get our information. So that can be enforced within the federal government, right? So if the State Department is saying, hey, the federal government is not going to purchase any Huawei-produced products or cell phones or whatever the technology is, and encourage other people in the private sector to do the same.
What people are worried about over here is that what they're trying to do is stifle the development of this gigantic company. And that what they're trying
of Huawei.
Of Huawei. Because Huawei went from having a tiny share of the marketplace about 5 years ago to being the #2 cell phone provider in the world next to Samsung. They just surpassed Apple. And that this is a Chinese company, and that because this Chinese company is connected to the Chinese government, the worry is that they're making ungodly sums of money, and it's enhancing the Chinese government's ability to perform surveillance or just to compete, just financially compete on a global scale. And tech nerds seem to be siding with Huawei, which is interesting to me. I've read a lot of tech blogs from people that are experts, and they say that there's no evidence that these cell phones have anything in them or are doing anything, but that there has been some evidence of network devices. And some of these network devices do have some sort of a third-party input or some ability, some ability to extract information that shouldn't be there.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like when you're dealing with a situation where you're competing with a country that also controls these companies that are the biggest cell phone and electronics providers on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, how do you handle that? Like, what is diplomacy with China like?
Well, we can see what's happening right now with Trump. It's not working very well.
Yeah.
This trade war that frankly President Trump is escalating, I think, is really, really dangerous. It's having a negative impact on domestic producers, manufacturers, farmers. A friend of mine is a small business owner, and he saw the news this morning about China retaliating with Trump's escalation, I think with another increase of their tariffs, and how he's thinking like, my gosh, that's going to impact my small business. I've got, I don't know, probably less than 15 employees, and trying to figure out how that's going to impact the pricing and production, manufacturing, and everything, every step of the way. What's so dangerous about what Trump is doing with this trade war that he's escalating is that these trade and economic wars can very easily turn into a hot war. And we're talking about a nuclear-armed country in China. So while there are trade differences and issues that we've got to address with China and issues with intellectual property and other things, the way that Trump is going about this, I believe, is very irresponsible and dangerous, creating a huge amount of uncertainty for American businesses, while increasing tensions with one of the biggest nuclear powers in the world.
That's a scary thought.
It is. And
Do
the
you really
ramifications
think that it's possible
of this.
that could lead to a nuclear war, that this trade war could lead to something military?
Yes. Yes.
What is Trump's argument? His argument essentially is that China has been treating us unfairly, and that the rates that we're getting, they're not even.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is recognizing a problem that exists. That trade imbalance with China is a real issue.
Why does that trade imbalance exist?
Well, I mean, you can point to
negotiated?
probably a whole host of issues in trade policy. I don't think it's any one single incident that has created that imbalance, and that, you know, I'm in Iowa a lot these days, and a lot of farmers have been struggling with that, and would like to see it fixed. A lot in the tech community would like to see these issues fixed, especially related to intellectual property. But the way in which Trump is doing it is having a very negative effect on these American businesses and jobs that Trump is supposedly advocating for, both in really in the uncertainty that is being set, where, you know, it looks like they're on the brink of a deal. Just the other day, it looks like, hey, okay, the United States and China, they've been working through these issues. They're on the brink of a deal. And all of a sudden, Trump sends out a tweet saying, nope, we're going to increase these tariffs from 10% to 25%. And now China is left like, okay, I thought we were close to working things out, and now left in a situation where they have no other recourse but to retaliate, as they did this morning. So you can see quickly how this thing is spiraling so out of control and increasing these tensions between our two countries, not being done in a way that to me is strategic, providing us with the certainty of that path forward to reach a specific objective of correcting this trade imbalance, which is how this whole thing began.
Why do you think he's doing that? Why would he make a tweet like that?
It's hard to explain, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't actually serve us and our interests, of our economic interests, of meeting that objective. I don't know if he thinks this is part of his masterful, you know, negotiation skills, but it's got a very dangerous effect. And the fact that we have nuclear strategists in this country who remind us that we are at a greater risk of nuclear war now than ever before, it's because of these kinds of things that are increasing tensions between the United States and China, other things that are increasing the tensions between the United States and Russia, you know, a country where we still have nuclear missiles pointed at each other that can be set off at a moment's notice, literally leaving us as people with just minutes before a nuclear holocaust, a nuclear disaster, nuclear war.
And you really think that this could be set off by these financial negotiations and by Trump saying something like that and just changing his offer in a tweet?
If you threaten a country's economy and their economic security, where does that logically lead? You threaten their ability to provide for their people. You threaten their ability to provide that stable environment, which China, so much of what they do is just like, hey, they look for that stability. What else? What other recourse is there other than the threat of military force? And in this case, when you're dealing with two nuclear armed countries, this is what's at risk. And it's something, you know, it's hard for a lot of people to conceive of, like, okay, my gosh, nuclear war, really? I mean, this is something that, you know, back during the Cold War with the you know, kids going under their desk, these drills, and you know, okay, where do you go find a bunker? But this is something that's a reality that we're facing today. And it's something that, we in Hawaii in January of last year went through with that missile alert.
Yeah, that was
that
crazy.
It was terrifying.
A fake missile alert, nuclear weapons on its way.
Right. Missile inbound towards Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. That was the message that was blasted out to over 1 million phones all across our state, on the radio, scrolling across the television, and people immediately like, seek immediate shelter. Okay, where do I go? Where do I take my kids? Where do I take my family? You had college kids sprinting across campus at the University of Hawaii trying to find shelter. It says seek immediate shelter. But the sick insanity of all of this is that there is no shelter. There is no shelter. There
Anywhere.
are no nuclear bunkers,
No.
which really, I mean, and for people in this administration and politicians who are ratcheting up these tensions with these nuclear armed countries, bringing us to this new Cold War, they are not saying, okay, well, because we're doing this, we're going to invest not just trillions, but hundreds or thousands of trillions of dollars to make sure that every single American in this country has a nuclear bunker within 10 minutes of their home or their place of work or their school. Because that's how much time we'd have. That's what we would need in order to deal with the consequences of the decisions that they're making and the failed leadership that they're providing. And so this is an issue that I'm raising awareness about because of what's at risk. I mean, this is the greatest threat that we face. And it requires strong leadership to walk us away from this brink of nuclear war, to be able to work with other countries based on cooperation rather than conflict, de-escalate these tensions, work out our differences, and walk us back from the brink. Stop this nuclear arms race that's making us and the world less safe.